How do you create a life that you really love? And once you have that life, how do you invite other people to share it with you? It's kind of like that metaphor that many of us light workers feel that we're climbing that mountain and we get to the top and we feel wonderful. And then how do you invite the people you're meant to serve? Do you have to climb all the way back down the mountain to meet them where they are? And well, Haden Starbuck says, no, man. Like, come join me on my mountain and experience the fun that I've created for myself. Join us to find out more.
Soul Nectar Show. The Soul Nectar Show. You're invited, delighted to discover who you are. Anything is possible if you believe. So join us on this beautiful journey. Soul Nectar Show. Soul Nectar Show.
Before we start this episode, I, Carrie Hummingbird,
And I, Akeem Sami.
want you to know that
You are invited
you're invited
to
join
Soul
Nectar Tribe.
If you like what you hear on Soul Nectar Show,
You will love being in person with us in Soul Nectar Tribe.
we invite you to check it out. First 30 days is free.
Right now, go to carriehummingbird.com, KERRI, hummingbird.com/membership, and sign up.
We'll see you at our next tribe gathering.
And now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire together and we share our stories of connection to that which is bigger than us, to the great mystery beyond the veil, to those synchronistic moments that lead us along a trail of breadcrumbs to discover who we are and what we came here to be, do, have, experience as divine beings in human bodies. I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird, and I love these conversations week after week to come on here and meet with amazing individuals around the planet who have stumbled upon many of the same lessons I've experienced in my own life. You know, it's just kind of amazing to me sometimes how in these conversations, it's so clear we're all experiencing some similar thing, you know, maybe just in a slightly different way, a nuance that's making it uniquely ours. But you know, we always have these similar paths that we walk with slight differences. And then we have some commonality and some stories to share. So I love these conversations. And today we're going to talk about curiosity and creative play and how are you interacting with Earth? You know, how are you getting grounded and how are you being connected? And today we have on the show Haden Starbuck. Welcome, Haden.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. So let me tell you a little bit about Haden. Haden has earned her living as a creatrix for the last 25 years. Her biggest achievement is creating a life that she loves, and that is the biggest achievement that any one of us can hope for.
Right?
She lives and breathes creativity, be it dog raising, conversations, her work, or the stories she tells about herself. Her number one personal goal to have fun. So I was actually on the Creatrix Podcast, and you guys can check that out. We'll put a link somewhere below, and I look forward to sharing all of her links with you. So much yumminess. If you guys want to be creative, like this is your person. So, you know, I was a professional artist for a hot minute, or trying to be one. And so I totally adore and appreciate creativity and just the way that it can actually open up that channel for spirit so that, you know, we sense the greater somethingness beyond the physical form. I would hang outside for hours and paint my garden and just found peace doing that. Before I even knew how to meditate, that was like my form of meditation. And I feel like it opened my channel so that I could step through, into this other line of work, this soul guiding. So what about you, Haden? How has creativity shown up in your life? I know this is what you do today. Tell us a little story about you and how you came to be the way you are.
Holy cow, a little story.
Pick a thread.
That's a challenge. I only child, grew up, spent a lot of time alone out in nature. And I think when you have that upbringing, you're naturally, they have imaginations, that the kids are just creative. That's what they are. And so I've managed, through, through some sidetracks and distractions and whatnot, I managed to keep the energy of that alive in my life. So when I'm alone, which is often, when I'm out in nature, which is often, I'm still that kid who's going and exploring and seeing the wonder of the world and playing with it. It's my happy place.
Yeah, I feel you. I love being out in nature. I feel like it's very grounding. It's reassuring. It's like I feel connected there. And it was actually, I had this moment where, because I spend so much time in nature and by myself, like you're talking about being creative and being out in nature, that I had this moment of realization that I needed to come down off the mountain and go mingle. I don't know if you ever had that feeling, but it's like, oh, that's time to go
I'm actually
immerse.
kind of doing something a little different now. I've got the mountain and I'm creating some energy around it, and then I'm going to invite people to the mountain. I think that's going to be how my next stage is going to go.
Nice.
Down, it's a mess out there right now. So coming down off the mountain and going into that, all my energy will kind of scatter. So I think it's better if I stay where I am, stay focused, and then invite people into my universe.
Yeah, being the mountain, because
No.
you're right, it does take a lot of energy to be in a non-mountainous space, so to speak. I mean, using the mountain as a metaphor for, higher consciousness, for example, more groundedness, more heart openness, right? I mean, it is hard to go into spaces where people are not operating that way.
Which is a lot of spaces out there.
There's a lot of spaces. So how do you help open people up to that? I mean, obviously people have to be willing. What have you realized? Because a lot of people on the podcast here, we're some form of light worker, or like we feel to be in service and things like that. And so these are the questions we roll around in our minds. Like, how do we invite people to this conversation? How can we open doors in ways that they will engage and participate?
For me, it just keeps coming back to what brought you joy as a child, because you're still that person. And the things that brought you joy, I'm, assuming there's something simple and not, I had to go to Disneyland every third Wednesday or something. Those simple things are still so powerful. And that's going to be what connects you to you and connects you to your playful, excited, expanded, inspired self. So for us, it was nature and hanging out by ourselves, dog in tow in my case. But I just want to say really quickly, I just went and got petrol at the station, and I came out of the store behind a woman, and there were two doors, and the first door she tried didn't open, so she went to the second one, and she said, just totally off the cuff, she said that something like that always happens to me, or of course that's her choosing the wrong door. And I just, all I could think, and I wasn't fast enough to say it out loud to her and if she'd be receptive, but the stories we tell ourselves are so important. I mean, if she always thinks that she chooses the wrong door, she's probably always going to choose the wrong door. So listen to yourself. What are you saying?
Yeah, it's like the power.
Going, but
No, it's actually I'm very aware of like the power of our word. That I've hoisted myself up in the past quite often by the stories that I told up until now. And so now I'm a little bit more cautious about how I talk about things. I'm more thoughtful with what words I use and more mindful. And some things we say so unconsciously sometimes we don't even realize the impact that we have on ourselves by speaking that into being and then having things unfold in that way, which reinforces the story that we just told. So then we could say, well, but it always happens. So it's true. And like, well, kind of, only if you keep saying it and doing it.
Yeah. And ultimately you are the creator of your life, right? You bring in the people and you create the scripts and whatever. And so you got to be kind of conscious to make sure you're creating the life you like that supports who you want to be, you know?
So what were some of your realizations on becoming a creatrix? Like, how did you start to realize that you were tripping yourself up by your own stories?
Oh, I'm still tripping myself up by those stories. I am by no means.
Who's not?
Yeah, I'm not.
Somebody who's claiming not to.
We're still circling the bottom of that mountain. We can see the peak in the distance, but yeah, meditation really helped as far as you know, just getting to that place in your mind where you're like, oh, okay, I'm aware of the stuff I'm telling myself, but I've always just kind of followed the fun. And so if I'm having thoughts that are not fun or are keeping me from experiencing things as fun or in the moment or being flexible, then I know that I got to check in with myself and just that it's not working. For instance, when you're working on art, if you hit a block, if you hit a big wall, there's ways around that, you know, there's ways to kind of shift your perspective or try another color, stand on your head, something. And
Step back 5 feet, see what it looks like
yeah,
from back there.
always. I take breaks constantly because it helps just to have that little distance, that little space. And that goes for everything, artwork, anything. So it's just so important to just be aware.
Change your perspective, change your view.
Yes.
Move around, see it from a different angle.
Yeah.
So, I love that you live on a property that has how many acres do you have?
I have a small piece. It's 2.5 acres, which is a city block in my city town.
And you're building pathways on it? That's your new project?
Yeah, I slowly but surely, I've always been a walker, and slowly but surely, all the land or much of the land around me, it's like civilization's moving in closer and closer. So I'm creating this like little sanctuary for myself. It's kind of a free form labyrinth. I thought a labyrinth was too much work. So so I'm taking like the little bunny trails and expanding them and the deer trails and expanding them for human walking. And I just go out there, my dog, my goat, and I, and walk trails. And right now I'm thinking about a friend's got a weeping birch. I'm thinking about making a humongous dream catcher because my mom used to make dream catchers out of weeping birch. So it's just a place to do something creative and to connect with the earth. And I don't know. I feel like I'm co-creating at the moment with my property and the trees that live on it. And it's
The nature
fun.
spirits, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we've lost touch with many people have lost touch with the nature spirits or the idea that, the earth is something more than a floor,
Yeah.
that's something more than a harvest of materials, to make something. But it's actually a living conscious being and, all these trees that get cut down so we can build things, those are all living beings too. I just decided today because I thought, I need to take action in support of sustainability. Like I have felt this call for so long in myself, and I do it privately, but I really feel like I'm meant to be that way in a bigger way. And how can I do that? Given what I'm doing, given I'm a podcaster, I'm a writer, I'm a messenger. How can I help with this movement? And it came to me this morning. Um, my husband was giving me a massage because he's a masseuse. I'm so lucky. He woke me up. He said, "You need a massage this morning." I was like, "Okay, thank you." So he's giving me a massage, and all of a sudden it came to me, and I was like, "Oh, well, we have this membership. We have this membership program for a Soul Nectar show called Soul Nectar Tribe." I was like, "Oh, well, I'll plant a tree every time somebody stays for a month." So how many trees can I plant per person, right? So I was like, Like, so for every person that's, that's a member that month, I'll plant a tree. And so I went and found a place that plants trees, a nonprofit, and I donated the money. And then I sent a little notice to my people, and I said, "Hey, you guys just planted a tree."
I love that.
It's tiny, like it's a tiny little act,
It's
but
not.
I feel like it's going to add up because I think that's what stops people. It's like we want to make a difference, or we want you want your property, you want the earth to be beautiful, like you love the earth. So you're taking your 2.5 acres and you're connecting with the earth and you're creating something right there, and that makes a difference.
It does for me, that's for sure. And I think too, because I feel like when I'm walking the trails and when I'm there, it's an intense form of grounding. I and I need that. I've got a lot of earth energy in me, and I will just show up on the planet as a better person if I have that. That's part of my healing and health, and it's just huge. So if we can each figure out what it is that we need, like some people are water people. You got to have water. I have to have earth, and that's my teacher, and that's the gift I'll hopefully get to share.
Yeah, and I love that you said some people are water people.
Yeah.
I've been realizing that I actually do really well when I float. The float tanks that are like sensory deprivation, and all I can do is lie there in the dark with no sound. I don't allow myself to have sound because I'm like, no, you just because then their mind will just go la la la, So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna ground. And of course, it has salt, magnesium in the water. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna like really ground inside the water. I think I didn't never realize that you actually ground in water too,
No.
until one day my husband's like, you can ground in water. Oh, that's why I like the bath so much, maybe.
It's the thing about our language. Ground sounds like soil, but it's not necessarily. And look at where you live. I live on a peninsula, surrounded by water. So tons and tons of salt water around here. But I'm a land person. I just have to live near the water. So that's kind of and I live in volcano country, so an earthquake country. And, so there's all these elements that I really need. I would not do well in like tornado, hurricane country. No, that's not for me. Or the desert, it's too dry. So we each have our little kind of that almost like a balancing the external environment, balancing with our internal, and gotta make sure you live in the right place.
How did you know that this was the place for you? Did you grow up there?
I didn't. I grew up south of here, but we did a lot of road trips and backpacking and whatnot when I was a kid. And there was just the very first time we came here, I fell in love with the plants. I mean, a little kid falling in love with plants. What? I don't even think I noticed plants before. Anyway, there was just something about here that it was just magical. So I didn't consciously come back here, but it's no surprise that I moved to this town right after college, and I'm still here. So I'm supposed to be here,
Yeah, if it feels right. I like what you said about staying at the top of the mountain and inviting people to come up and be with you, rather than trying to go down the mountain and go be of service. No, it's like we have to keep our vibrations high, but we also, I think a lot of people make up stories. At least I've heard a lot of stories about, and I used to tell these stories myself too, about, oh, well, I can't be with those people because they're toxic, or once I started becoming aware of energy, I was like, oh, that's toxic, or oh, that's negative, or oh, that's low vibration, or I don't want to be around that. And now I feel like there is a place we can get to where we can walk in the world as the mountain, and everywhere we go, our heart can stay open, because we realize that that's all our sphere of influence, is how we feel and react to the world around us and within us.
Oh yeah. If I'm really, really grouchy and I go to the store, everyone around me is grouchy. If I go to the store and I'm super happy, everyone's really nice and kind, and okay, I was going to say smiling. You can't see smiles anymore. Their eyes are crinkling above
Their eyes are crinkling above the masks. Thank goodness we don't have to wear masks on our interviews.
Right?
Is COVID transmittable over Zoom?
Over Zoom. Oh no, don't sneeze. Oh, yeah. It's interesting to come. I mean, I almost feel like I'm always looking for that silver lining, but because of the pandemic and because I've had to stay home and, the world's a little less safe for sneezing than it used to be, it's really allowed me to come to this place to say, hey, I mean, I always knew I had to have the mountain in me, but now to really consciously be building a mountain in my life that I can share it's just been really, really healing and powerful. And I am just so grateful that this is what I get to do right now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people's lives have changed radically since COVID started. And how we respond to those changes, I think, has everything to do with our ability to be curious, which is one of your gifts, is curiosity. So talk about how curiosity serves in a time like now.
I think it serves any time, really. The thing about curiosity is what excites me isn't necessarily what excites you. Okay, that's a bad example. I think you and I are kind of similar. But
Probably very similar.
Jane go down the street. Oh, sorry. Okay, hey, this is a good thing to tell you. I have my alarm set so that 3 o'clock every day, I'm documenting what I'm doing with my life. So I'm now about to take a photo of Carrie and I on Zoom. And then at the end of the year, I'll have this whole documentation of what I did for the year. So you have been documented.
I am now in your journal of daily activity.
You've seen those fun things where people do like a 1-second video.
Yeah.
And then they do this whole thing for the year. And it's just like, time is so different right now. I thought it'd be kind of a fun thing to do. It's like every day at 3. Ironically, I seem to always be eating at 3 o'clock. So thank you for offering me a little bit of a variety.
Yeah, at least today it was conversing.
So, oh my God. Okay.
That's kind of interesting because time does slip away. I mean, I feel like you're speaking to the timelessness. Like when we're not in some kind of daily routine that's requiring us to hustle our butts here, there, and everywhere, time operates in a different way.
But ironically, I mean, when you're in creative flow or spiritual flow or something, it's timeless. So it's this weird struggle between, okay, we're wanting some structure, so we feel like we're getting stuff done, but we also want free flowing and timelessness.
Or to feel timeless while we're taking inspired action. I've been playing with this too. Like, how can I be stillness in motion? I mean, this is actually the medicine of hummingbird, is being stillness in motion. And so when I was given the spirit name, I was like, okay, so stillness in motion. And then I'd never seen my Gene Keys chart before. And then when I saw that, and I saw that stillness was in my chart and timelessness, I was like, huh. So all of this works together. I see how this is. It's like these spirit messages and these guidance and these promptings. And then like, here's this map. And then all that's on there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Get back to curiosity. It's like, because you're curious about that, you're seeing the synchronicity. You're seeing the fact that things are related. And there's signs everywhere.
But you have to get into the flow of that. You have to get into the creative flow. And like you said, like I have experienced that like in the middle of an art project, a painting where I got stuck, because I might have gotten frustrated with it. It wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. I wasn't executing it the way I thought I would. The way it was in my mind wasn't coming out. And I many times, and I was doing it professionally. I was selling my paintings and people were paying pretty good money for them. And so I would sit there and I would go, I don't know how to fix this. Like I'm stuck. It's interesting how painting is like subconscious healing in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people are out there right now specifically using it for that. And I think where people get in trouble when they're trying to do something creative is almost everything you just said was all ego based. Instead of just showing up and seeing what happens. Dance with the paint, dance with the canvas, play, be curious.
Yeah, I have this aspect of me that as soon as I start to create the painting, I'm like, oh, I'm going to sell this one. Was it?
Yeah, that's dangerous.
I know. And then I would get into force. Like, oh, this has to look nice because it's going to be like, I have to make it look good at the end of the day. And I can never just do the painting just because, like if I didn't have a goal, then I didn't just relax and just paint because it made me feel good. I was like, well, I have to finish this. And then I
Yeah,
have to sell it.
I get a lot of people that are like, oh, I'd love to be an artist, as my main income. And I think a lot of people really wouldn't like that because for me, it's a job. I happen to have a job that's creative, but it's still a job. And you just have to find a balance with that. And it's not fun for everyone to do that.
It's actually deep personal inquiry. I mean, like every painting awakens something new inside of you that evokes it. And it's like that uncomfortable feeling that I've actually felt in transformation work, I used to feel when I was in front of the canvas. So I would something difficult would stir up within me, and it wouldn't make any sense because I'm just painting some flowers or my garden or something like that, but there's just something about whatever my state of being was or whatever this color or this scene was evoking in my subconscious or what was being worked out that was actually causing that discomfort. And so it's like, well, do I keep working on it in this state of being or do I stop or what's going on? Is it better to push through it? Is it better to just stop and let it sit? These are all questions that I faced as an artist.
Did you start seeing a pattern?
Mostly when it doesn't go the way I want it to go. That's still a pattern.
No,
I have expectation in my chart. So, expectations lead to disappointment.
Interesting. Yeah, I just find that people kind of how you approach creativity is how you probably approach everything. So if you get to that point of, the ego going, you need to do this, or I'm disappointed, or whatever's happening, how do you get through that? How do you navigate that? Because that will teach you how to navigate other things in your life, because that wall is everywhere.
Exactly. The wall is everywhere. Yeah. How you are in one aspect of your life is how you are everywhere. It's just that you don't see it until you see it, and then you start seeing it everywhere. It's like, oh my gosh, there's that wall again. It's the same thing. And it's showing up in my relationship, and it's showing up in my painting, and it's showing up when I try to meditate, and it's it's like the same thing.
And we might be a little more evolved in relationships versus painting. There's certain areas of our lives where we're slightly older than and wiser, but in general, the theme, the core of who you are is you're still you. So how are you showing up? What are you doing? How are you doing it? Are you happy?
I'll go back to your core principle. So that's kind of your guiding light. Like, is it? But see, but sometimes, Haden, it's like you do have to face the music. Like sometimes there's stuff that doesn't make you happy, but you still have to face that stuff to be with it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you don't face it, you're not really gonna get any wiser. You're not gonna move on. You'll have that same lesson will keep coming back and coming back.
You just keep pulling that same canvas out and going, well, here I am, I get this wall. I can't finish this.
I moved beyond this yet.
It's stuck.
Yeah. I just, since we're talking about painting, a friend of mine had a tragedy in her life, and she did a series of paintings that kind of helped her move some of that energy out of her body. And she never did anything with them. They were pretty dark. She came back later and she added something to each one that lightened it up, that kind of brought it more present to where she was at that moment. And now she's, a few years later, and she just has this series of paintings she keeps coming back to and adding and changing and manipulating to sort of represent where the growth that she's done and where she is now. And it's really interesting to watch her evolving on canvas because it mirrors what's going on inside, and it's kind of beautiful, you know?
Yeah, it's fascinating how therapeutic it is. And it's therapeutic in a feminine way, like in the left brain consciousness. Like it's not so like we're going to talk about this problem and we're going to figure it out, like just sit here and talk about your relationship or sit here and talk about your grief. It's like it's just sort of like you might not even know that that's what's being processed, but it's working itself out as you surrender to that process, right? Of like standing in front of the canvas and just seeing what comes forth.
Yeah, I like that. It's also feels like it's, because if the grief is there, you're going back to the perspective thing, is you're coming to it and approaching it and healing it from a different perspective. So if you just sat down and talked about it versus if you paint about it, you might end up healing the same thing and going in the same place and whatever, but wow, it's way more fun to paint.
Yeah, it's less drudgery.
And maybe some of us are just painters and some are talkers.
Or you can combine the two, you could just put them together. Do both.
For my friend too, because these paintings are so personal and she kind of doesn't want to have to tell her story to the public, whatever, not that they're super graphic. But I kind of feel like that if she did share them, if she did do a show, I think she'd help other people who don't have a way to express what they're feeling. They haven't found the voice to say that. And, obviously it's up to her if I also suggested maybe she burns them. It's like, just transform that energy, move on.
Yeah, there's that too. That aspect of creativity is also destruction. So creativity is not just about creating new things, it's also about being willing to destroy things and have the energy recycled.
Yeah. Well, they're not separate. It's not black and white. Everything's a circle. Everything's connected. And
that could be part of what's going on here, because you're talking about being really connected to nature, and nature has cycles. And when you're really tapped into nature, you're tapped into the fact that there's cycles. Like there's a full moon and then there's no moon, and then there's a new moon and then there's a full moon. And then, it's like things are always, the ocean comes in, the ocean goes out. There's always a cycle. And it's when we hold on. It's when we hold on past the expiration date because we're so afraid of letting it go.
Or you expect a result before it's come to fruition.
And that's me. Like, like, I thought you were going to give me what I wanted when I wanted it. What are you doing? How come you're not giving me what I want when I wanted it? What's the matter? What did I do wrong? Oh, I did something wrong. Like all these voices in our heads. I mean, I know I'm not the only one, people.
You
please.
Are not the only one.
I'm not the only one. So how do we deal with this? I mean, so you're suggesting that art is a good way of grappling with these things, but in a fun way.
I think it's fun. Obviously, you're going to run into yourself wherever you go. So you'll have to play with that at some point. Being an only child and having just grown up, I think my parents gave me a journal first thing. It's like, here's a journal, here's a camera. Just deal with it. Go do whatever you need to do. So I've always sort of processed life through those things. And I find it really helpful. I kind of wish I'd done more drawing and painting. I'm not as comfortable with that as I would like to be. But yeah, I just observing the world, and it's just my way of processing. I think we all have different ways of processing.
Yeah, catching these interesting moments. And I feel like artwork also expresses how you feel about yourself too.
Or about anything. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it comes out. I remember sitting in, because I took a lot of art classes in college. I didn't have a degree in it, but I took as many classes as I could. My dad was like, you're going to have computer science. It's like,
oh, and art.
You need to be, and I had English as my major, and he's like, yeah, you need to have something practical so you can get a job. So he was not a fan of me being like all liberal arts, So I squeezed in as many creativity classes as I could. And when I was taking them, I was like insecure, I noticed about my drawing, and I would compare
Yeah.
like to other, like I'd be doing my like nude figure, like the person's in the middle of the room and we're all like circled up around the nude person, and then we get to like draw from our perspective, and I was like trying to get the proportions right and figure out how to make it look real, and and like some other person was like extremely good at realism, and I was like, I suck at realism. Like, I cannot draw something that looks real. And I kept trying, and I was like, I can't do this. So mine was much more fluid and emotional, and like it would all just come out this other way. And that's like how I am. I am so not 3D. Like, it's not my thing. Like, I float around. I'm like in this other, more fluid spirit space. And everything is sort of like that in my whole life.
I remember one class we had, it was kind of, I think, a general sculpture class. So he was exposing us to as much as we could. And I realized that my brain could only work one way. So if like you have a block of something, let's say clay, and you sculpt, you take away what you don't want to reveal the image, versus you start from nothing and then build up to an image. I realized my brain automatically worked one way versus the other. So I don't know. I think one of the big things about creativity is, so you're sitting there comparing yourself to other people's journeys. And that's the same with life. It's like, I can't compare myself to a CEO in New York City because that's not me. That's not my life. That's not what I want. And if you can come to terms with your creative place and your creative process and your creative flow, then it's kind of loving yourself and accepting yourself and going, oh, here I am. This is good. It just is,
And that's exactly why we have to be courageous about following our hearts and being guided to what's more true for us, because we've been conditioned with conformity, as like, okay, in order to belong, you have to conform. And I'm really an advocate of switching that model to be yourself and belong as you are.
Yeah.
I like that model better.
Oh, heck yeah. Well, it makes more sense. And I think that's a bit what's happening now with just the shift that the pandemic has given us, is I think more people are going, yeah, who am I? What do I really want to be in that job I've had for 20 years? No, maybe I want to do something else. This is the time for you to shine as you, and you're going to draw people towards you that are your people.
Yeah, and I think art teaches us so many lessons, like all the ones I've mentioned. I learned so many lessons from doing my art and learning how to follow my own path, and this is me. You either love it or you don't, and that's the other thing, is like, do you love it or you don't? Well, that's none of my business.
Yeah. Oh, other people loving your work.
Yeah, it's none of my business. If you listen, awesome. If you don't, awesome.
Yeah.
Whatever.
No, your process. Love your life for sure.
But getting to that place of confidence inside of me, that's been a journey, because I used to really care about everybody liking my stuff. I was so upset if they didn't like just love it and buy it up and be like, oh my gosh, you're like the best artist ever, Carrie Hummingbird. Like, I would be so upset if they didn't like it and they passed me by. I'd be sitting at art shows. I sat there my first art show, and I was like crying because nobody was buying any of my art, and I was so sad. And the next person was making so much money, and I was like, they don't like my art. It's not any good. And I was like, this is beautiful. If I was going back to me now, that younger me, I would be like, it's just so silly. Who cares?
Well, and two, it's like, who's the audience? Maybe you're not at the right art show. Just because it's a good art show for the person next to you, your people might be 2 towns over, and not every single person is going to like your work. Period.
I can't believe that not every single person's going to like my work, which means not every person's going to love me completely. I can't believe that could be true. That sucks. I think everybody ought to love me.
I have people that walk up, because I do art shows as well, and they'll be like, oh, I love your colors. And it's like, Yeah, the only reason you like them is because they're your colors too. We have this in common. It's not everybody's color palette. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, hey, my tribe. Found my peeps.
Exactly. All my customers, I feel like if we'd met in different circumstances, we'd be friends. And a lot of them have become friends of mine.
That's beautiful. So, how do you work with people to awaken the artist within?
Well, I do have that class, which is the link that I sent you. That is a 4-month class. It's self-guided. It's, super easy. I think what I'm trying to do with that class is to really show people that to be creative and to tap into your creativity doesn't take 7 hours a day. It can be 5 minutes. You can do it while you're having your cup of coffee. You can just have it be running in the background in your life, in your head, in your mind. You can be creative all the time, anytime. You don't need the studio and the serious whatever. So that's what that is. But I do coaching with people. So whatever it is they need to deal with all those voices in their heads.
Yeah, since we're artists, we totally know about those voices, so you can't be weird with us. We artists are already weird, so you can tell us anything. We've already heard it.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know many people that aren't artists, and I haven't talked to them about it. But I wonder if artists have faced a lot of those voices, and if they faced themselves more than other people. I don't know.
I get the sense so, just because I'm a very curious person.
Yeah.
And I actually used to lead this in Silicon Valley, California. There's an art show that all the artists open their studios. And so I became the executive producer of that thing for like 3-4 years, during which time I went from a high-tech salary to basically nothing. My husband was very pissed. But anyway, that destroyed that marriage. So, but I had to follow my passion, so I was leading these artists and I would hear from them all the time. I would hear all their stories and I would just see their lives and I would see what they were going through and, and what they would do for their art. Like, it was amazing. I have a friend who she basically gave up her domicile. She gave up her living arrangement and just like lived in her van and drove around from art show to art show with all her stuff and just like cuddled up inside her van for like a good couple of years because she wasn't making enough to survive any other way. And she refused to go back to corporate. So she's like, this is is a declaration. Like I am an artist and I will keep at this until it's successful and I'm not giving up on myself. And see, that's the thing I love is because that's how I feel about my work I'm doing now. I finally found my lane. Not to say I still don't love making art, but there was something inside of me that said, I could be an artist of my whole life.
Yeah. Maybe the painting you did was a gateway drug.
It was my gateway drug to spirit. Spirit's
Why
like,
not?
here.
It's perfect for that. Yeah.
Follow me. You'll destroy your entire marriage, but it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I almost feel like creativity and art, it sort of is. It's like this little school of lessons where you do learn your strengths, your weaknesses, how to deal with them, how to move on, and to be able to hear yourself think. Because if you can hear those voices, then now you can move on. You get like me with working on my land. I've always been a land person, but it's not till now in my mid 50s that I'm actually starting to do this big project that me knowing me as a kid, this just surprises me. It took me this long to get here.
Does anybody else feel that way? Chime on in when you reply to the show. I know think we all feel that way. It's like, are you serious? It took me this long to wake up. It took me this long to find my stride. It took me this. What? I'm like halfway through or more, hopefully less. But like I'm 52 as well, and it's like, okay, I think I have another 50 years in me. Like I hope so, because it took me this long just to get here. I want to enjoy this as long as it lasts.
Well, I think it feels like, seeds are planted throughout our lives and we hit stages. I came out of college thinking, actually I came out of high school, I wanted to be a writer. And I realized I don't have enough stories yet. What am I going to write about? I like boys. Come on. So I went out and I lived a life. And now if I do choose to write, I feel like I might actually have something I can say, So it's that whole thing about pushing, like you want the results now. I couldn't be who I am now if I tried to do this in my 20s. So I just have to accept where I am and enjoy it. And who knows what the 60s, 70s, and 80s and beyond will hold.
Hopefully, amazing moments. So
Absolutely.
fantastic. Well, you're doing your podcast, so that's another form of creativity. And so you are out there with your voice, and that's gorgeous. I love to see people with their voices out there sharing their wisdom and having these conversations that elevate the consciousness. I love it. So I'm going to give people the link to your Awaken the Artist Within course that you've got going on, and also to the podcast, the Creatrix Compass, or Curious Creatrix Podcast. That's a mouthful. I was like, I think I'm going to trip over that, but I think I sort of said
like
it.
Tongue twisters.
It's a tongue twister. So what else do you want to share with people before we head out?
Yeah, so my website where you can just find as the hub for everything is Creatrix Compass, and the podcast is the Curious Creatrix. And yeah, I that's it for me. Just come say hi. Come be on my podcast if you want to talk about creativity.
That's awesome.
Everybody's got a story, and it's fascinating what goes on inside of them. So
I love that. It's so simple, very simple.
I'm all about simple.
Yeah, I can see that. I feel that about you. It's very, very simple. And it's good. Simplicity is like a lot less stressful.
Oh, I don't do stress well. I just don't. It's
No, I still live in the middle of the city kind of space, but I have the mountain within me. And the only way I keep that is by like floating and going to nature and things like that. I've got to do it on a daily basis. Like tonight, I'm going to go for a 2.5 hour float because I just need to decompress and just let go. And, because I want to keep my vibe. I like my relaxed vibe, and it helps me to be a nice person, as you said. When I start getting agitated, which can happen, especially technology can really, it's a different Carrie Hummingbird. So, we all have to maintain our vibe. So,
and ultimately, you spend the most time with yourself. So, are you someone you want to hang out with?
Yeah, do I even want to hang out with me? That's such a good question. When I'm in the flow, I'm totally flowing. Like, especially if I get in my creative flow, I'm just like, I don't even know how much time went by. It's like, oh, okay, it's time to eat dinner. Cool. A whole day went by. But I like being that way. I like being in that kind of trance, in that flow state. That's like the best state to be in. And that sounds like, what you're experiencing over there as well.
I love that. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the show. And everybody who's listening, we really appreciate you for being with us for this conversation. And hopefully you enjoyed the vibe and feel more grounded and relaxed now, because we just brought a whole lot of mountain medicine to you. So, and, keep it simple. Keep it simple and really love on yourself. Yeah. And if you want to do some creative expression, check out Haden, the Curious Creatrix, and her work on the awakening the inner, the artist within. So check it out. Please like, subscribe, share, and all that kind of good stuff. We really appreciate when you do that. It helps us reach more people. Soul Nectar Show, we're in the top 5% globally for podcasts. So we want to celebrate that. Woohoo! Congratulations, everybody. And thanks for listening in, and thanks for sharing, and love you guys. We're going to give you kisses now. Here come the kisses. Mwah. Mwah. And we'll see you next time on Soul Nectar Show. Have a great week, everyone. Bye for now. If you found even one gold nugget in this episode of Soul Nectar Show, will you do us a favor? Will you subscribe, like, and share this episode? Maybe even write a comment and let us know what you thought about it. We really, really want to engage with you at a much deeper level. Let's be part of community together. Have a great week, everyone. Bye for now. To dive in deeper to nourishing conversation, visit soulnectar.show.
Soul Nectar Show. Awaken, awake to show. Take a sip from the drip of nectar, from the source of who you are.